Hi guys, my name is Ilinka Vartik, and in this tutorial we are going to analyze and practice an amazing masterpiece for the advanced level, Liszt transcription of Bach's organ prelude in A minor from the Prelude and Fugue cycle BWV 543. If you're currently practicing this remarkable piece, but you're struggling with the multitude of polyphonic, technical and expressive challenges, or if you dream about learning the prelude or the entire cycle, but you don't dare to start because it seems so overwhelmingly complex and you're afraid of embarking on such a difficult journey, then this tutorial will offer you a step-by-step map that will help you to understand and master this piece one little step at a time, so that you can play it expressively in the needed style with freedom, confidence and brilliance. So today we will analyze the artistic concept, structure, characters and dramaturgy of the prelude, set and bring out important expressive tasks, dynamics, voicing, phrasing, articulation, tempo, pedaling and so on. We will decode all the polyphonic puzzles, conquer the many technical challenges, and you will find step-by-step practice tips for each and every phrase. By the way, this video is also a part of the newest project that I launched only a couple of weeks ago for the members of my piano coaching program. This project is entitled A Real-Time Practice, and its purpose is to take you behind the curtain and offer you a realistic insight into how professional pianists practice. So, how we conquer various difficulties, what types of mistakes we make and how we correct them, how we alternate various practice methods for achieving the best results, and so on. I'm sharing here on YouTube the first part of this tutorial, and the second part is available in the members area at pianocareeracademy.com along with other videos from this project. I hope you enjoy it. The organ prelude in A minor is one of the most splendid examples of Bach's genius. The dramatic organ sonorities, the exquisite polyphonic elements, the incredible harmonic language and the overall transcendental character of this music will offer you some of the most fulfilling, uplifting and transformational practice sessions of your life, while the wide spectrum of expressive, polyphonic and technical challenges will take your piano skills to new heights. Here we need to create a very dramatic, severe and powerful character, imitating the sonority of the organ, of course, but this strictness, this transcendental atmosphere should not be mechanical. So our playing has to be very rigorous, very well structured from a rhythmical point of view, without any lyricism, but at the same time avoiding the lifeless exactness of a computer. So you will notice how I use little rubatos from time to time, little tenutos, other rhythmical or dynamic deviations in order to achieve this purpose. So let's get started. Let's stop here for now. This was our introduction, and it consists of 3 phrases. It is played with the right hand, and it is not difficult at all from a technical point of view, but from an expressive point of view it is quite challenging. First of all, we should avoid playing again like a computer in this rigid percussive manner. Sometimes I hear this piece being played like this, and I think that it is entirely inappropriate from a stylistic point of view. So we need to maintain a very strict character. This should not be lyrical, but at the same time we can imagine that these notes, the upper notes, are played by the violin. So in the first phrase that ends where the triplets start, we will voice the upper voice. It's very important to keep your entire arm and wrist relaxed, to have this feeling of freedom, because it will prevent that harsh and ugly sound that sometimes tends to come up in our playing, and put more weight into the fingers, playing the upper voice, at the same time trying to track with your hearing this melody and to phrase it. Here in this first phrase I am trying to create a rounded phrase shape. Bach didn't leave us any dynamic or articulation indications here. So remember, all my expressive recommendations are quite flexible, but I spent a lot of time thinking about them, and in my opinion they sound quite well, being in tune with the character of this music. So we start piano, voicing the upper voice, moving forward, a little bit of crescendo. towards this C here, and from here the diminuendo until this G. So horizontal phrasing is very important in this piece, and I'll tell you more about it as we start practicing this amazing section with this wonderful organ sonority. I simply love the organ. That's why this is one of my most favorite Bach pieces. So now I will practice this slowly. In the beginning, I played it in the approximate final tempo that I hear for this piece. Not forgetting about forward movement and microdynamics. Now, in the phrase with triplets, I'll create an ascending phrase shape. I'll start softly and I'll make poco crescendo until I reach an approximate mezzo forte here, as the duple meter resumes. This piece is now pretty well in my fingers, so there are not many technical challenges left for me to conquer, but I will mention that here you can practice non-legato first with a heavy key attack, for acquiring technical stability, feeling this freedom in your entire arms, in the wrist, keeping the fingers very strong, hand on rounded. Again, very exact rhythm. But you can allow yourself just a tiny bit of rubato. For example, here creates a much better character. The music sounds more alive. I also recommend another fingering version than the one that is indicated in my score. So I play it like this. It's more comfortable than you see than this one indicated in the score, because we have less hand position changes. But it's important to place here the third finger after the fifth. So you're playing 3 notes in a row with 5, 3, 1, like this. When this feels comfortable, in a slow practice tempo, gradually increase the tempo, switching to legato practice, still a bit heavy. And always draw the layout, the topography of these passages with your wrist. So arm and wrist lead the way. I got carried away. Let's play a bit slower now. This feeling of freedom should never leave you. This should be one of your goals. So on one hand, you have your expressive goals, sound quality, dynamics, phrasing, all those things. And on the other hand, this feeling of technical freedom. Everything should feel comfortable. Everything should feel as if it's part of you. And in the beginning, it will not feel like this. In the beginning, it will feel awkward and raw and new. But if you're patient, if you practice consistently, you'll definitely get there. So I reached mezzo forte here. Now let's reduce this heaviness a little bit, acquire more lightness, activate the fingertips more. And let's not forget that here we're starting piano. Crescendo, and we have reached this duple meter. By the way, I played the first phrase with pedal, and when the triplets start, I'm playing without pedal because it will be a mess if I use the pedal. Here we have consecutive scales as compared to this chord-based structure we had in the beginning. It's actually very interesting to see what chords we have here by playing these 4 notes arpeggios as harmonies, as chords. So it goes like this, follow the upper voice. So simple and so amazingly beautiful. So you might do this little exercise as well to have a better understanding of the underlying harmonies behind everything you're playing. Not to mention that these harmonies coincide with your hand positions. Here on the other hand, we have scale-like structures. Here, as you start playing with your right hand in the low register, make sure that everything here feels very loose, that you're not keeping your elbow too close to your side, because the more sharp angles you have in your arm, in your wrist, the more tension will accumulate. So make sure that all the angles are wide. Also make sure tension doesn't appear in your elbow, because that's what I tend to feel if I'm not aware enough. Let's start one more time from the beginning of this phrase. Yeah, it's important to put the fourth finger here. If I forget to do that, then I don't have enough fingers to reach the G sharp. If you're just starting to learn this piece, obviously you should practice much slower and for a longer period of time. Now I'm showing you a very accelerated practice process, so to speak, because, as I mentioned, I'm trying to make this video a tutorial as well. So to save you watching time, so to speak. Here we will voice the lower voice, and again you have to track the melody formed by these voices with your hearing in a horizontal manner. And if here you imagined that the violin is playing, now you can imagine that the cello is playing. So imagine the timbre of the cello, the low, juicy, rich overtones of this beautiful instrument. And here we will use a descending phrase shape. We will start mezzo forte, making poco a poco diminuendo until we reach pianissimo here. And then here, this moment always gives me goosebumps when this organ point, imagine that this is played by the foot pedal of the organ, you know? So it's a totally different sonority, it's a different register. And when it appears as if from afar, in a very menacing way, because here we will build a very impressive musical structure. I'll tell you all about it in a minute. But it has to appear, you know, like a very distant rumble of thunder. Let's practice this third phrase from the introduction. I feel that I'm playing these notes now just with a little bit of harshness, not too much, but they have to be deep, but at the same time you have to hear the connections between them. So again, we have to avoid this type of static effect, but track this continuity. Going forward, starting to make diminuendo. And this has to be very resonant. Practice some more the last phrase, and then we will move to this whole new musical structure that appears here. This E was a bit too loud. I will work on it now. Start the diminuendo a bit sooner, but remember, all this is flexible, so you can tailor the topography of this phrase according to your wishes as well. Just make sure you don't go too far from Bach's style. Maintain the tempo integrity. Okay, let's not get carried away again. So here we start a very big musical structure. It is not a phrase. It is actually formed of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 phrases. Every phrase has 2 bars, and it's like consecutive waves that together take us to the first very big culmination of the piece. And in playing these 6 consecutive phrases, the most important thing is horizontal phrasing. I like to say about this piece that it is a long-term game. So while each individual vertical structure is beautiful and perfect in itself, the most important thing is to see the perspective, to see where you're going. So imagine if we take this storm metaphor, the storm is very far away from us, only very distant rumbles of thunder. And by the way, right now outside there's a storm and there's some thunder I can hear. So it's approaching very, very gradually. And you have to build this feeling of anticipation. You have to build this very powerful character. And in order to build it, you have to understand it and feel it first. So the storm, approaching, approaching, very slowly. It's not in a hurry. It believes in its own power, you know. And with each new phrase, our sonority is deeper and more powerful as well. So if we start pianissimo, then we have piano, then mezzo forte, forte, fortissimo, and so on. In other words, you have to have the patience to not open all your cards to increase the sonority too much from the very beginning. So you need to know how to hold and dose this gradual approach of the culmination. Now, if we talk about each individual phrase, I would create, at least for the first ones, a rounded phrase shape. So we begin softly, a little crescendo until here. Diminuendo again. So for each one, a little rise and fall, but as we approach the, let's say, 5th and 6th phrases, already we'll have more of an ascending phrase shape. From a technical point of view, use the same method for conquering each individual structure, for making sure all these passages are comfortable. They're quite intricate, but since they feel quite comfortable for me now, I will not go into a lot of detail in practicing them. But you have to use the magnifying glass for each and every bar, for each and every 2-bar phrase. After that, very, very thoroughly. This is the only way of assimilating this very well in your mind and in your muscle memory, and then being able to play this music with freedom and being able to focus on the expressive side that we just discussed. Otherwise, you'll just be lost among notes and fingering and pedaling and so on. And also, it's very useful to practice without pedal first, because when you play without pedal, everything is super clear, everything is out in the open, and you'll be able to hear your dynamics very well, your rhythmical evenness, every little thing. Then when you add the pedal, you will notice that everything feels easier to play and sounds better. Now I will play with pedal. So let's not forget about this wonderful organ point here, a different organ register. And it needs to be prepared as well. We can also make a little tenuto here on this note, so listen to it and then resume the tempo. So be patient here. You will have the feeling that you want to make big crescendos straight away. This music is so catchy, so to speak. It just grabs you, doesn't want to let you go. But you have to tell it, I am in charge and I will distribute this dynamic growth in a very gradual manner. So don't be like an enthusiastic 16-year-old who can't control his or her emotions and just says everything they have in mind. No, be like a wise person who can see how the situation is going to develop. Here again, from a technical point of view, it's important to not feel any tension in your arms, to lead with your arm and wrist, and at the same time your fingertips have to be very active, very precise. So finger articulation is very important here. You don't simply play like this, you know, they have to be very clear. After all, this is Bach, this is not impressionist music. Now I will play very slowly, most of all so that you have the time to notice all the little details. time this lower A appears, listen to it very well. Here the storm starts beginning to approach, but there's still room to go. Already growing. More powerful. Here my pedal was a little bit dirty, and by the way, since we're here, this bar is quite uncomfortable and it requires a lot of magnifying glass work. Without pedal. I had to spend a few good hours here in order to achieve this more or less technical comfort. And here everything is easy again. By the way, speaking about voicing, please notice that as we start this entire section, you can track with your hearing these notes that after this go into the left hand. So there is that hidden under voice that you can emphasize a little if you want. I recommend that you do. So let's play very slowly now with pedal this last phrase of this entire big section. And here our culmination begins, but that is not the peak yet, only the first peak, and then we have a second one. Now let's try to build this structure again, one more time, a little bit faster. I'm trying to make sure that my pedal is not too cluttered and that there is clarity in what I play, but at the same time, obviously, playing this without pedal altogether is not a good idea either, so I could try to use half pedals. Let's see how that goes. I think this is actually a good idea. Slowly a bit, even though I could already play this quite fast in the final tempo. Here I would reach a pretty resonant forte, but I would still hold my horses, so to speak, for this culmination that follows. So don't give everything you have yet here, but play quite powerfully. This is our first real lightning with thunder, so to speak. Obviously, in the left hand, we just have to play this powerful octave, but in the right hand, I wouldn't say that this is an actual technical challenge. This passage is not very difficult if you practice it correctly, but it obviously requires a lot of magnifying glass work. I will play it a couple of times slowly, then gradually increasing the tempo. We can use the magnifying glass just for this little spot here. Can be a little bit tricky. This alternation of the hands. For this trill, you can either use 1, 2, and 3, or 1, 3, and 5. I usually play with this first fingering version. You have to work out what works best for you. when the slow practice tempo, and by the way, non-legato is always your best friend if you feel any tension, any discomfort. So when this feels comfortably, gradually increase the tempo, not forgetting about freedom and leading with your wrist. You have to be able to encompass these 2 bars on one breath, so to speak. Horizontal. Everything should be very horizontal in this prelude, because it is quite a dangerous trap, and it's a normal tendency to play everything in a vertical manner as static pillars. But if you do that, the whole charm of this music is lost. So even when you practice slowly, see the perspective again, see the destination in front of your eyes, move forward. Again, we try to play as evenly as possible from a rhythmical point of view, but if you feel the need to emphasize certain notes, you can do so with a tiny rubato or tenuto. One more important thing, if you notice in the score, again, this organ point, as we call it, I hope this is also the correct English term, lasts for 2 bars. But this is impossible to do from a technical point of view because we don't have the organ foot pedal. So the left hand is needed here, and also for the trill, which means that we will have to try to keep this A octave on pedal for as long as possible. Here is approximately what I do. So I press the pedal, change. So you see I change it here, but the A is still on pedal. I can change it or not here, especially if I use full pedals. You will need to change it, it will sound dirty. If we use a lighter pedal, you'll be able to hold this A almost for as long as written, until the trill. Not changing it on the trill, it's already not possible. Finally arrived. We have been building this moment from the very beginning of the piece. This is how powerful Bach's music is. Now, these octaves in the left hand are not that difficult, but again, they require some serious work and very good mental and technical anticipation. So, as you play a certain octave, your eyes, your mind, your arm and wrist have to already aim for the next one. Even as you play slowly, you see, I'm always one step ahead. And here you can use all those practice tips that I share in our scale course in the lessons for level 7 when we practice octaves. So we have arrived here. This trill should be practiced slowly as well, by the way, for a very good coordination, making sure that these repetitive structures don't cause any tension. Here, as you start playing these octaves, you can again start with just a bit of tenuto, and then, as if a train, is gaining momentum. But you have to make sure that these little tempo deviations are not too big, and everything is maintained in these strong rhythmical pillars. Remember, a good rubato is based on strong rhythmical pillars. If these pillars are shaky, that is already not rubato. It is rhythmical anarchy, and we do not want that, especially in Bach. So, have fortissimo, all the weight coming from your entire body. I wouldn't even say from your back. So everything you've got, but avoiding harshness. This is always the secret. If you just pound into the keyboard, this is already a noise, not a sound. So you see this softness of the key attack should be present, the gradual key attack, not the striking one. And you can make a little ritardando here as well. And a little diminuendo as you reach this E here. So imagine if your train gained momentum and then it slowed down this massive, very powerful structure. You have a micro technical difficulty here. This jump here, which you might need to polish by using the magnifying glass. Making sure that this feels very comfortable. Focus is also very important, so aim with your mind this D sharp, even when you play this structure, not forgetting to hold down this upper B. Visualize what's about to come, and actually you'll have to keep down this E as well. So when polyphonic elements start to appear, make sure that you follow the score very carefully and you don't forget any of these notes that are being held down and so on. One more time from here. Let's start here. I meant let's stop here, as the main theme appears again in the lower register after the culmination. You have to play it very, very softly, again with this distant, menacing character. Here you have to imagine that we are performing a sudden switch of register on the organ. You know how the organ has all these registers. You pull a switch and it changes the sound completely. So if here we have this vibrating, rich, very powerful sonority, suddenly only one register is left. It is very soft, very distant. So a whole new compartment is starting. This is a whole new wave. The first wave ended, and this is the second big one that will lead to the biggest culmination of the piece and to the actual ending. Obviously practice very slowly first, and you can voice a little bit these upper notes as well. Now this structure is quite tricky. We have these very interesting layers that are being built on top of each other, but in a descending sequence, so to speak. And you'll have to emphasize those longer notes that are written with the stems up. So first you'll have, this is the first layer, and this note is a bit deeper, and you hold it down. Then you have the second layer with this note being held down, the third layer, and this D has to be held down as well. And you will notice that because I have small hands, it's not entirely possible to hold this A very well. And then in the left hand, the last layer, and this is the main note. So basically you'll have this, you see, sequence of notes as bell chimes being built on top of each other. Remember, the character is very rigorous, very strict, very energetic here, but also dramatic, and a bit of freedom should be present. If we remember that we're talking about the Baroque style, and Baroque, its essence is all about being rich and ornamental, very intricate, very exquisite. So this word in itself already gives us an important key that helps us to decode this piece. So here you need to practice. You can even play, to avoid tension, play non-legato first, but holding down those notes that are longer and have the stems up. Here, do whatever you can. Don't obviously strain your hand too much if you feel any tension or pain. You should not hold down those notes that you can't hold. So, in everything we have to be reasonable. either this or hold down the A. So usually I just hold down the upper D. Even though I notice now that if I put my third finger deeper, I slide it deeper here in between these two black keys, then it becomes a little bit more possible. But knowing that we'll use the pedal as well, it's not necessary to go into such extremes. Yes, indeed. You see, if I place this finger here, still it's not entirely comfortable, so you have to notice how this feels for you and make your individual decision. Now I will practice this for myself for a little while, achieving a little bit more technical stability, because this is one of those bars that still feels just a little bit shaky for me. This little element has to be practiced independently. Again, a lot of mental anticipation, knowing where we're going, preparing everything in advance, so that no clumsiness and hesitation appear here, because this is what tends to happen usually. And after this, everything is very easy as well. Now let's talk about dynamics. As we played this structure, we started pianissimo, then we can make poco crescendo, just a little bit of crescendo, until here, basically starting this phrase with an approximate mezzo piano. Remember that the actual decibels of the dynamics are not so important, so it's not about how loud you play, let's say on an absolute dynamic scale. It's mostly about how everything sounds in relation to what happened before and what will happen after. So this has to be just a bit brighter than the previous phrase. And here you can continue on the same level of sound intensity, or as you reach this G sharp, you can start the next phrase piano again for another wave. A lot of dynamic decisions to be made here, but this makes our work much more exciting, I think. And here it's very important. Now I rushed, but you shouldn't do this. So even if it means a tiny rhythmical deviation, don't play like a computer here. Make sure that you play this A properly, and then play the following octaves comfortably. Let's play this slowly. Don't forget the bells. D, A, D, A, D, A. And suddenly, what an interesting harmonic game. We have G sharp, the dominant. One more time, and always, I forgot to mention this, but I do it all the time, before playing any fragment, any little motif, any little spot that you polish by using the magnifying glass, you have to imagine it first. Hear it, very importantly, hear the tempo in which you're gonna start, and then play. I don't say this all the time because it goes without saying. That's what we always do. We focus first and then we play, so that the mind leads the fingers and not the other way around. Here I will see now if I can make some more pedal changes. On one hand, I like this rich sonority, on the other hand, and I will notice this much better as I listen to the recording, because my piano has this beautiful resonant sound, and when I practice, most of the time it feels like the pedal sounds great, but when I listen, sometimes it's great, sometimes some extra pedal changes are required. So this is thorough work, and recording is very useful. Yes, I think that you should change it as often as possible. Your hearing should be in charge here, so I will not tell you each and every change. By the time you reach the level that would allow you to learn this piece, you should already have a good feeling of how pedaling works. work as well. So let's return one step back. We had this beautiful phrase here based actually on a dominant 9th chord. So this is the dominant 7th chord for our main tonality A minor, and this is the dominant 9th chord. So this is what we have here. Bach knew his harmony very well. And you can create this wave layout here as well, this dynamic curve with a rise and fall, but they should be very little because you also have the more general rise at the level, at the macro level, so to speak, that starts here. And the little ones, they are little ripples in the bigger wave, so to speak. Now I'm playing close to the final tempo, but I will keep reminding you that first you need to practice this very slowly, very thoroughly. And again, a little wave leading here towards this A. Don't forget to hold it down as indicated. And these octaves, not too dramatic, not too powerful. And then we reach this phrase with 30-second notes that needs some very good magnifying glass practice. I wouldn't say it is very difficult from a technical point of view. Actually, it is quite comfortable, and it is a good occasion to show off your virtuosic skills, so to speak. I like music that is written comfortably and allows us to play it with such freedom and enjoyment. Now I will play the phrase leading to these passages a little slower. I'm trying to find the sonority for the bass. It should be deep, but not too much, so we don't need, again, all these vertical pillars that would interrupt our phrasing. Approximately what you should aim for, and obviously slow, concentrated practice first. Notice that we have hand positions here. First one, second, third, fourth. You see? As if shifting our entire arm with each position, and if you shift the arm in advance, playing this will feel much easier because your fingers will not have to travel these distances on their own. Now you will feel that as you go with the thumb on a black key, this is quite uncomfortable, so you have to find the movement that allows you to play this with ease. Obviously anticipating it, you see, making this movement here. If you anticipate all these hand position changes, if you're always one step ahead with your mind, the technical difficulty will be reduced by at least 50%. But of course, the actual agility and obedience of your fingers will have to be trained one step at a time, very thoroughly. Can isolate this spot. Now here, as this passage passes from the right hand into the left, there is this connection that you have to work on as well. Obviously slowly first. This is very comfortable, especially if you practice your scales on a regular basis. And here, if you practice your G major scale, again, it's very comfortable. Here we have a simple G major arpeggio, nothing difficult. Now I will play this with pedal, but slowly. For sound intensity, here we should be somewhere between mezzo piano and mezzo forte. So this is a bit dramatic, but again, we're holding our horses and we're not playing in a very powerful manner either. The culmination is still about to come. And as you play this descending scale, lift the pedal because otherwise it will sound quite dirty. So when we have mostly harmonies, a little bit of half pedals can be used quite successfully, but here no pedal. And again, you hold this with your fingers, so you can play most of this scale again without pedal. You can use some pedal on this ascending arpeggio. These beautiful passages are written in the improvisational style that was so famous in Bach's epoch. So a lot of the time, virtuoso keyboardists or organists would improvise similar passages that were quite fast, very ornamental. So in playing them, we should not forget about clarity, about this very good diction that we achieve by keeping our fingers very precise, by having a good finger articulation. And we also don't forget that the freedom that allows our fingers to be so quick and agile comes from the arm, comes from the fact that we don't have any tension here. And we don't forget about horizontal phrasing. We always move ahead, we don't lose our bigger goals, and we don't get lost among these beautiful trees, so to speak. This is another very interesting section, and let's take it one step at a time. The continuation of this video can be found in the members area of my piano coaching program at pianocareeracademy.com, which you can join by clicking on the link in the description box below, and have instant access to other real-time practice videos, to our step-by-step courses such as the course for beginners and the progressive scale and arpeggio course, to interactive projects such as our online masterclass or the monthly questions and answers project, and to many hundreds of other detailed tutorials that reveal the professional principles of the Russian piano school and my holistic approach to piano playing. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it and that you'll have a very inspired and productive practice. I'll see you really soon. Bye bye!